If you encounter any problems you cannot resolve yourselves, you will be assigned children. That usually helps.
Think about it. How often is the fantasy of a relationship sold to you? The fantasy of marriage, love, commitment, the whole package. Have you ever felt the pressures of this fantasy? The pressure to fit in, the pressure to succeed, and the pressure to not be left behind. There exists an unspoken doctrine that charts the path to marriage. We follow it unknowingly, lulled by tradition, lured by its movie-like charm, falling into the inertia of this blueprint laid before us. We then seem to enter this stage in life where finding connection and finding love becomes a race for efficiency. A race to tick the box early before your biological clock runs out. And in this race, no one wants to come last. The Lobster is a dystopic satire that mocks this pressure by using extremities to explore the reality and absurdity of relationships. Now, in this world, if you're single and you fail to find love in 45 days, you're turned into an animal. In this highly pressurized world to find love that mirrors our own reality, the absurdity of it all forces us to question, what is the cost of being driven by this pressure? What is the cost to not feel lonely? And more importantly, what are we compromising to fit in? To address this question, it's important to first unpack the powder keg of pressure that the film ruthlessly mocks. Now, the reality is, as human beings, we are boxed in and categorized, sorted into labels. Our identities compressed into binaries, and in the context of relationships, you're single or you're taken. The film surfaces the inherent stigma associated with the status of being single, particularly the idea that you are less than whole, you're incomplete, you are lacking, and only with a partner will you experience abundance. A fascinating way of how The Lobster mocks this exacting ideology is through the process of checking into the hotel.
Sexual preference?
Women. However, I had one homosexual experience in the past, in college. Is there a bisexual option available?
Similarly to the process of checking into a prison, this parallel insinuates the need for rehabilitation through the crime of being single. The protagonist is stripped naked and his belongings taken away. He's robotically processed and questioned, forced to wear clothing that's not his and shoes that don't even fit. But it doesn't end there. He's ceremoniously forced to go about his day for a period of time with one hand to not forget the message. The message that you are less than whole, you are incomplete, you are lacking. The film brings this idea home by literally dehumanizing those who don't find love, by turning them into an animal.
Now, the fact that you'll turn into an animal if you fail to fall in love with someone during your stay here is not something that should upset you or get you down. Just think, as an animal, you'll have a second chance to find a companion.
Whilst this dystopic world feels extreme, is it that far removed from what we're taught today? With messaging like this that continues to indoctrinate the way we think and perceive relationships, the way the fantasy continues to be marketed to us, it's critical to become aware of this subtle pressure that may be unconsciously guiding our decision to choose relationships for the wrong reasons. When stories like The Lobster mocks the absurdity of forced coupling, it reveals this deeper truth. How often do we choose relationships out of fear of being alone and out of the illusion of being complete? In The Lobster, time is more than a pressure. It's a weapon. Singles are given 45 days to find love or face transformation into an animal. To To buy more time, they must tranquilize and capture other loners, turning connection into competition and love into a transaction. This world mirrors our own, where urgency, whether from the biological clock or societal expectations, prioritizes efficiency over introspection. In the hotel, guests scramble for superficial pairings with no real time to consider what they actually want in a partner.
But even then, you must be careful. You need to choose a companion that is a similar type of animal to you. A wolf and a penguin could never live together. Nor could a camel and a hippopotamus. That would be absurd.
What makes The Lobster so piercing is how familiar it feels. Its brutal system stigmatizing singledom, glorifying coupledom, and punishing deviation is a grotesque reflection of how modern society treats romantic relationships. When the metric for love becomes age, scarcity, or fear of being alone, the question arises, are we entering relationships with clarity and agency, or with our eyes wide shut? Whether you settle for the first person who ticks the right boxes, stay in something out of inertia, or chase connection out of fear, The Lobster urges us to ask, are we pursuing love as a conscious choice, or are we chasing a fantasy we've been conditioned to believe in? The Lobster holds up a warped mirror to love, where connection isn't built on soul or story, but a shared affliction, a limp, a lisp, a lens prescription. Love in this world is not felt, but proven through sameness. While exaggerated, this critique mirrors reality. Modern dating apps often reduce identity to algorithms and aesthetics, ranking desirability by looks, proximity, and curated bios. Personality becomes performance, and value is measured in swipes. This again invites a deeper question. In a system designed for efficiency, where do we place true value in the search for connection? Now, as you've probably grasped at the point of this video, The Lobster is continuing to challenge audiences to reflect on what we're really sacrificing to avoid being alone. Too often, it's our identity, autonomy, and self-worth, all traded for the illusion of companionship. Now, to avoid being turned into an animal, one character goes as far as to bash his head into a wall to fabricate a common trait with another person. This common trait being having nosebleeds. In reality, how often do we tend to distort our true selves or compromise honesty for what we like, who we are, for the sake of matching with someone who isn't meant for us? In this particular example, the main protagonist forces himself to align with the violent tendency of a psychopath at the hotel for the sake of not being left behind and to not be transformed into an animal.
The last thing I want right now is a kiss from a silly little girl.
It's an extreme satirical case, but it reflects a real question. What red flags do we ignore? What emotional harm do we tolerate just to say we're not alone? Now, last but not least, the ending. In the film's final moments, the protagonist finds a companion who shares his short-sightedness. Their bond depends solely on this trait until she is suddenly blinded. He then faces an impossible decision. Should he blind himself too, just to preserve their shared connection? This is left up to the viewer's interpretation, ultimately leading us to the question that the anarchic world of The Lobster asks us. What price are you willing to pay for a relationship? And more importantly, is it worth it? Now that we've explored where this pressure comes from and the cost of giving into it, what if coming last in this race to marriage is actually a win?
55% of marriages end in divorce. 90% of your relationships that are started before they are 30 end. If those were the stats for surgery, none of us would fucking risk it.
Yes, we're social beings, but the quality of our relationships, not the speed at which we enter them, shapes the quality of our lives. So why rush one of the most important choices we'll ever make? Why not take the time to understand who we are, what we value, and how we want to show up in a relationship before jumping into one just to meet some arbitrary deadline? The truth is, the cost of compromising your sense of self is just far too high. And maybe, just maybe, the season of being single isn't something to fear, but something to embrace.
Wondering if...
No.
So you're saying
No.
there's no chance
No.
It's a rare and valuable time to deepen your relationship with yourself and to define what a true partnership means for you. Because here's the truth. Being single isn't something you need to escape. To realize you're already whole and the right relationship will recognize that at the right time. Being single isn't a failure. It might actually just mean freedom. If you happen to reach the end of this video, thank you so much, as always, for listening to my musings. And if you enjoyed, I'd love to hear from you, to get your perspective, to understand your thoughts. So comment on the video, like it if you enjoyed it, and as always, smash like, subscribe.